Hiya, it's Merv again with some more Duster top tips. Today we're going to be changing the brake discs and brake pads in my Phase 1 Duster, which will be exactly the same as a Phase 2 because the underpinnings are exactly the same. One thing you've got to be careful of when buying pads, you sometimes have two options, ESP and non-ESP versions. Mine's got ESP, so you've got to make sure you choose the right one. The clue is in the price normally. I've gone for the padded brand. It appears that this is above the mid-range spec, not quite Brembo quality, but not far from it. Used by a lot of major manufacturers. So these were bought from Euro Car Parts with a 35% online discount voucher. Good reviews on padded, so I'm quite happy to go with this. So the car's already jacked up on axle stands, both wheels are loose. There's a tip for you: always loosen your wheel nuts before you raise the car. It makes it a hell of a lot easier for you. Okay, so the car's up in the air, let's get the wheels off and get this sorted. So another reason for getting both wheels in the air is you are able to turn the wheel if you need to get a little bit more room or view on a certain part of it. Just makes life a lot easier. So as I said, the wheel nuts are already loosened. When you're undoing tight nuts, it's always best to try and do opposites, and it puts less strain on the wheel integrity itself and prevents the possibility of warping. Exactly the same when you do it up. Do it equally as opposite as you can. And also always have your locking wheel nut to hand when you're doing this. That's the wheel loose, a little wobble, and there she is. Move that out the way. Okay, next thing we're going to do, as you can see, where the disc has worn, you end up with a ridge on both sides. The pads are sat in this area, so when you take the caliper off, you've got to try and clear this ridge that is worn away. So what we're going to do, we're just going to prise the calipers open. Now, do not touch this rubber because that will ruin the integrity of the piston. If you just get in there, get the other side of the pad, and then you can lever that out. You can just see it just pushing back. There we go, and then that will give us enough room. So now what we're going to do, we're going to prise off these little packers here. Do it with a screwdriver, and then we're going to undo this outer caliper. Okay, next we're going to remove this clip. Should just remove with pliers, may need a bit of persuading with a screwdriver. Let's persuade it with a screwdriver. Just remember how this goes back in as well, and don't lose it. Okay, next thing we're going to do is remove these retaining screws. They shouldn't be tight. They use a T40 spline. They shouldn't be tight at all. I've just jammed it. There we are. All they do really is just literally hold the disc on. All the strain is done by the wheel nuts themselves. So and when you do tighten them up, don't over tighten them. There's no need. All it does is just hold the disc in place really. And you can see there's when you put the new discs on, you'll see the locations for them. So that's that job done. So now we come to undo the screws which hold the outer caliper on. Now these are a 7mm Allen's key, which is a little bit unusual because most sets go from 6 to 8. So just make sure that you actually have a 7mm before you start the job. But again, they shouldn't be too tight. These weren't, so we should be good to go. Okay, so that's what you should be left with. Yes, there's certainly not a lot of meat on that outer pad, nor the inner. So what we've got to do now is take this holder off here, which has got the two big nuts then, and then that gives us access to remove the disc. Right, we'll get cracking with that. Okay, so these are an 18mm. I've gone to my 1/2-inch drive here because I just needed a little bit more purchase. As you can appreciate, these ones are a little bit tighter, but they weren't too bad. Didn't need a breaker bar or anything, so we were fine. I'm considering giving these a bit of a spray. I may go for imitation Brembo red, just for aesthetics. I just don't like looking at rusty things. Not quite hand loosing yet. These are quite tight because you'll probably see that that's actually thread lock on there, and what I'll probably do is clean that off and put some new thread lock on there. I mean, thread lock just stops it vibrating off. Also stops moisture getting into the thread. Okay, so that's removed now. Like I say, I'm probably going to give that a clean and a paint up, and now a disc will be ready. Look at that! Didn't have to use a hammer on it, and there's our disc off. So what I'm going to do is get a wire brush, give this a very good clean around here. Might have a bit of copper grease, and then put the new disc on. So like I say, just get a wire brush, get any bits of rust and corrosion off. What I'm going to probably do is just use a bit of brake cleaner around there in a minute, dry it, put a little bit of copper slip around there, and then put the new disc on. Okay, so there is one disc fitted. These two holes only align in a certain way, so you have to spin this round a few times until you actually get them to line up, so you can screw them back in. Don't do them over tight, no need to. Again, I'll put a little bit of copper slip on the end, but that's it. That is the disc on. Now it's the calipers, but I think I'm going to do a little bit of painting before I put them on. Right, so just before I push the calipers back, what I've done is I've loosened the top of the brake fluid reservoir, put some rag around it, so if it does spill out, it's not going to go anywhere apart from soaking into the rag. So I'm at the stage now where I'm using the caliper wind back tool, It's difficult to show you because I need a hand to hold the camera, but basically this pushes the piston back to its where it should be, so it enables you to get the new pads in there, which are going to be a lot thicker. Be back in a moment. So to give you an idea of where, as you can see, that is the old one and that's the new one. Huge difference. You're wondering, this spring clip actually goes into the piston on the front. It's pretty obvious, so you only have one clip per pair, and they are handed with this mark here, which it does actually tell you in the instructions which side of the car to put them on. Nothing too difficult, everything's been okay. I'm not an expert mechanic, and if I can do it, anyone with a bit of mechanical knowledge I'm sure can do the same. Well, here we have it. Disc put on, calipers put on and painted red. Not to everyone's taste, but I don't like seeing rusty bits. Hope you enjoyed it.